Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Corby Kummer, Executive Director of Food and Society at the Aspen Institute. We're very proud and pleased to be bringing you our conversation on food justice on the work of Black farmers. First, I have to acknowledge and thank our fabulous partners at Share Our Strength. You'll be hearing from our main colleague, Elliot Gaskins, at the end of today's webinar, and Julie McNulty also helps conceive everything, as does my colleague, Mary Castillo, who's brought together and helped convene this wonderful group of farmers and activists and spokespeople for the work of Black farmers. The impact of structural racism on the wealth and economic opportunities afforded to Black families, as I imagine all of our viewers know, is staggering. For Black farmers, a long history of discrimination and unjust agricultural practices, from the unequal administration of government farm support programs and policies aimed at bolstering large-scale agriculture, to discriminatory lending practices that keep farmers from accessing capital, have decimated opportunities for prosperity and cost families their land, livelihoods, and agency. In this conversation, we'll uncover the barriers to entry that make it difficult for Black farmers to thrive. We'll also explore the ways farmers and activists are turning the tide to build resilient agricultural communities. I'm very proud to introduce the moderator, David Street, not only because he's a fantastic person, but because he's a fantastic Food Leaders Fellows, another program at Food and Society at the Aspen Institute we love being part of and have the privilege of working with. David and Ebony Woodruff, who he'll be introducing, are proud central members of our fantastic second cohort of food leaders. And our third cohort we've just announced, and you can meet them all on Food and Society's website, aspenfood.org. David is director of community engagement at Feeding America, with nearly 15 years of experience working with nonprofits at the national and local level. Before that was director. He was a next gen leadership and engagement strategist for Bread for the World, which is when we were introduced to him, a Christian advocacy organization urging U.S. decision makers at the national level to do all they can to pursue a world without hunger. And he moved from Bread for the World, where one of our first cohort fellows, Jose Soto Rivera, works now in a different department, but they're proud former colleagues. And we are proud to be a current colleague of David and Ebony, and so glad to be joined by our other guests today. I give you David and look forward to our conversation on food justice.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Street, and I have the pleasure to serve as your moderator for this afternoon, this important conversation looking at food justice for Black farmers. Incredibly grateful for the space and the opportunity to come together to learn, dream, and build on solutions that our star-studded panelists will share with us this afternoon. I have the pleasure to bring before you June and Angie Provost from the Provost Farms. June and Angie are esteemed multi-generational sugarcane farmers situated and enchanting the marshy landscape of South Louisiana. This accomplished farming couple is recognized for their success and resilience as advocates for farmers. Their journey is marked by triumph and challenges, but it's propelled them into activism, particularly in championing the rights of socially disadvantaged groups frequently victimized by unjust practices. My good friend, dear friend and colleague, Ebony Woodruff, is currently the director at Southern University Law Center's Law Institute for Underserved and Underrepresented Communities. She, along with me, is a 2023 Aspen Institute Food and Leaders Fellow. In addition, Ebony serves on the board of directors for the New Orleans Food Policy Action Council and Provost Farm Heritage Center and Community Garden. Ebony has a master's in agricultural law from the University of Arkansas Law School. And last but certainly not least is Carter Crane, who is doing some fantastic work as Director of Food Sourcing and Network Services for the Food Bank of Central and Eastern North Carolina. had an opportunity to go down there last week and put eyes on the good work that the food bank is doing. And they are certainly trying to make sure that the line to the food bank is shorter. And so we look forward to hearing what Carter is doing in conjunction with his team, but most importantly, the community groups and individuals that the food bank of Central and Eastern North Carolina are working with. Panelists, welcome. My first question I'll present to June and Angie, but I want everyone to answer it. And that's simply this. What brings you to this work? What brings you to this work? June and Angie, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Angie. This is June. I think to start off, what brings us to this work is just our passion for what we are doing. Being farmers in South Louisiana is pretty much all we know. That's what we grew up on. We're multi-generational farmers. We have a strong link to the crop of sugarcane, and we are here to honor our ancestors' legacy. And out of the struggles that they went through, we find it a necessary job for us to simply carry on what they were able to create for us in sense of a pathway towards justice and staying tied to the land.
Yes, I mean, farming is my family's legacy. I'm a fourth-generation sugarcane farmer. I mean, it's everything. It's my life, my passion. I mean, farming is everything to me. You know, being a one-time close to 5,000-acre farm, you know, and seeing that number go all the way down to 100 acres. I'm sure we'll touch on that a little bit more, but you know, this is why we are here, to kind of help other people and just to kind of let the people know exactly what's going on.
Ray, you want to answer that same question? What brings you to this work?
Well, I'll jump in. What brings me to this work is my passion for food. I'm a native Louisianan, and food is such a huge part of our culture. And so I always wanted to get in the industry of food and agriculture. And so when I was a state representative, I stumbled upon agricultural law and policy, and I was finally able to mesh my passion for law and agriculture and food. And all as well, being a alum of Southern University Law Center, which is an HBCU, and so it's one of 6 Black law schools in the nation. And so as a student there, my professors always instilled in us the importance of using our legal education to make a difference in our community. And so this is my way of doing that.
Thanks, Ebony. Carter, did you want to jump in here?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in food banking for about 15 years and doing a lot of work around fresh produce, a lot of work around excess, and the more kind of being into it, realize that there's more to food security than just feeding the line. You know, we really started getting into the last few years on understanding more root causes, promoting equity and access. We know that, you know, rural communities struggle with this more than ever, even though that a lot of food is grown obviously in rural America. And how do we connect some of those logistic dots? But we need to be in a place where we can support local farmers, address these systemic issues that are part of the food system right now, and how can we build on that work and try to end hunger.
Appreciate that. Thank you all for answering that. June and Angie, I'm actually going to come back your way. And June, you kind of alluded to the question I'm getting ready to ask, so I'm teeing you up. At the height of Black farming in the 1920s, Black farmers operated about 1/7 of all farm operations in this country. And as of 2012, Black farmers now made up less than 2% of all farmers in this country. Can you tell us about some of the barriers that you have observed, witnessed, experienced contributing to this steep decline?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, 1920, there were 920,000 African-American families farming. You know, today that number is less than 40,000. I mean, they actually did to where they showed the loss of African-American farmers. And I think this is very conservative. It was like $368 billion, the loss. And I always talking about generational wealth that is lost in the Black farming community. I mean, just in this area alone, there were over 60 Black farming families, not individuals, families. Now, just in sugarcane, there was over 60 farmers. Now that number is less than four. So just can you imagine the generational wealth that's lost just in this community and what's happening across America? But the issues, I mean, when I was at my height, close to 5,000 acres, sugarcane, you need close to $500 to $800 an acre to farm your crop. I'm just using me as an example. Some years I was given less than $150 an acre to farm that same crop. My white counterparts are getting $700 an acre to farm. I mean, there's no way you can produce a great crop on that small of amount of money you're getting. And not only that, is the timing of the loan. And this is not just isolated to us. This is across America. For us, we need our crop loan at the end of January, beginning of February. I got my loan one time, middle part of June. It's no way you can make those 5 months up. It's no way on a farm you can make that time up because you have a small window as it is. I mean, they just treat us, farming is difficult. You have weather, you have a lot of different things you have to worry about, but we have to worry about all of those things added on. And that's why as Black men, as farmers, we are all dying young. My dad died at 66. There's a graveyard of Black farmers all died of a young age because of the stress and worries they put on you as a farmer and as a man. They just, it destroys you. It kills you slow. I always call it a slow death.
I don't want to take up too much of the time in answering the question, but I would like to add some specificities as to how this is happening on a technical level. So first of all, we have to work on destroying racism and discrimination and all the isms that we have in this country. I mean, pretty much blatantly what we have experienced verbatim is when June is saying that he got his loan in 2014 in the month of June when he should have gotten it in February. When he got it in the month of June, he had found out that his signature had been photocopied to numerous USDA guaranteed applications. And the USDA is saying that this is just the way we do things, right? And then on top of that, you have a county committeeman who is positioned by the USDA to be farmer outreach, right? This person is supposed to reach out to farmers and understand what we are facing in the communities. Well, that county committeeman is going out there and confiscating our land leases. And I know oftentimes we talk about the access to land for Black farmers, but to me, the access is getting paid because most white farmers are sharecroppers. Right? Our access to resources really is just about the unending force of racism and discrimination that we face, so that everything that we try to do becomes a barrier. Like I said, that county committeeman, as he was finding out his signatures were photocopied to numerous documents and instruments, the county committeeman is there taking his property. And that same county committeeman has the authority to hire and fire USDA directors and reps within the department. So it is an unending web, an unending cycle that we face as Black farmers. And so our job is just to let people know exactly what's going on. And also to fight for our rights as citizens so that every single farmer out there, no matter your background, has a pathway to well-being and what we call true wealth in our community, which is access to food and access to our rights as citizens.
That access is incredibly important. Thank you so much for sharing and getting us started here in the conversation. I want to turn now to Carter Crane. Carter, small farming communities are responsible for producing many of the foods and resources we cannot live without. And we also know that these communities, these farms, are oftentimes facing disproportionately high rates of food insecurity. My question for you is, how can we do a better job of connecting rural communities with food and resources that are being produced in their own backyards? And what role can food banks and other purchasers play in this?
Yeah, that access point is huge in this conversation. The food is there. We have enough food growing in this country to support people that need food. And typically they are close by in those rural communities where those farms are located. We've been able to take advantage of a local food purchasing grant from USDA, LFPA Plus this last year. And we're getting to know small farmers. We're getting to know the BIPOC community. We're getting to know women-owned farms and connecting them to our local agencies. We are one food bank, but we have 6 warehouses and we support about 650 soup kitchens, food pantries, after-school programs, Meals on Wheels type programs for seniors, supporting kids, and we're connecting those farms directly to those agencies. And through this grant, we are able to pay fair market value for that produce, for those eggs, for that ground beef, ground pork, whatever the case may be that is grown on that farm. And it's been such a game changer for our agencies to receive that fresh local produce, to make those connections where we were just adding value to those connections, paying that fair market value for that food to support that community. We hope that collaboration between small farm and agency can go beyond this grant, but we definitely want to continue the conversation, continue to see those needs met at that local level, because logistics can play a huge part in food waste as a whole. There's a lot of excess that has to be grown on farms. Small farmers are a little bit different. They're growing what they know they have markets for. And so to be able to have this funding to create that market and match that market up with people in need has been a real success for small North Carolina farmers moving forward. So we have been excited about it, but definitely need more funding and more thoughtfulness about where we purchase our food. And that's how purchasers can help, right? To be thoughtful about where we purchase our food, where it may be more expensive to buy local, to buy from a smaller farmer sometimes. But, we should be asking those questions. Why is it more expensive? What these mass production of food, we need all farms, right? We need small farms, we need big farms, but we need to support our small farmers where we can. And we need to be able to be thoughtful about where we buy our food and make those connections locally.
Thanks for that insight and perspective, particularly around purchasing. Ebony, I'm coming to you now. Here's my question for you. Land disposition and unequal access to capital are some of the biggest challenges facing Black farmers. And you're doing extraordinary work in this space. You're doing extraordinary work to help Black farmers pass down their assets to the next generation, in fact. Can you tell us a little bit more about your work? Tell us a little bit more what you have going on.
Yes, thank you. So currently I'm the director of the Agricultural Law Institute for Underrepresented and Unserved Communities at Southern University Law Center. And I wear many hats. So foremost, I'll say that I interact with the law students for the next generation of attorneys and really try to create experience for them in terms of showing them that agriculture is a viable path, because we need more Black lawyers working in this space. And so providing opportunities for them, whether that direct legal services to farmers or opportunities for them through other partner organizations to have internships and externships so that they get experience and get exposed. Again, I've already kind of alluded to direct legal services. And so I do partner with organizations around the state, and I'll go out into the communities to provide direct legal services. Primarily, a lot of that work.
Kind of cut out there for a minute, but I know it's around heirs property, and so if you can come back in, we'll certainly.
So heirs property is a huge issue for a lot of Black farmers. And so helping them to get clear title to their property is a lot of the work that I do in terms of providing those direct legal services. And so I'll go out again into the community and have estate planning, basically estate planning meetings where I'll speak about estate planning, the importance of estate planning, but individuals who want to can get free wills. In addition to that, we do provide services in terms of doing free successions, because with heirs property, you have to do successions, which is basically the legal procedure of transferring ownership of the land. And so we do provide those services for free. In addition to that, I bring awareness to a lot of the issues that impact Black farmers by speaking at conferences, but also hosting continuing legal education programs for other legal practitioners to increase awareness around these issues and hopefully inspire them to add agricultural laws, some of the specific areas, whether, like heirs property, maybe estate planning, to their practices as well. So thank you for the question, David.
Oh, yeah, no worries. And shameless plug, I know that this work was part of a focus on a documentary, right? The Gaining Ground, the Fight for Black Land. Is that correct? Am I getting that correct?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So 2 years ago, I had the pleasure of being highlighted in Gaining Ground. It's a wonderful documentary that John Deere and Al Roker Entertainment put together. And they followed, at that time, I was a land retention attorney with the Federation of Southern Cooperatives Land Assistance Fund. And so they followed us in our work. And so it really tells the tale of heirs property, and it brings hope because they follow different families. And so oftentimes heirs property may seem daunting. Again, for those who are not familiar, it's just family land that's being passed down without a will. It's problematic because after several generations, you can literally have hundreds to thousands of heirs that have a legal interest in the property. And unless 100% of the heirs come to an agreement on what they want to do with the land, then oftentimes it is held up. In some states, they have adopted the Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act, which lowers the threshold to 80%. And there are some other great provisions in that act that assist the families that have heirs property. But it's just a awful situation where sometimes families probably won't be able to get clear title to the land because, again, there's so many people that are involved. There's generational divides where typically the older generation has an emotional tie to the land because maybe they were raised on it or they visited it, during summers to visit their grandparents, whereas the younger generation, families have moved, they may not have been to the property, and they just don't have that same connection to it. And so there's a divide on whether we should keep it or whether we should sell it. And so again, Gaining Grounds, Eternal Polk was the director. He did an amazing job. It tells the story of heirs property, but then you see some families that actually had success in getting clear title, and then they also talk about some positive resources that families can use, again, if they have heirs property. So thank you, David.
No worries. Thank you, Ebony. And this kind of ties into my next question, swinging back to Angie and June. Provost Farms is all about preserving the ancestral legacies of Indigenous as well as Black growers. Tell us why this is so important to you. And how are you seeing Black farmers leading the way when it comes to regenerative and sustainable agriculture?
Preserving the legacy of our ancestors is so important because we grew up in a very segregated South here. And in that segregation, we have not been able to hear or been taught the stories of how our culture was developed. And so it's very important for us to not only formally educate our community, but also just bring about some of the joy and some of the things that we contribute, the great things that we contribute to the South Louisiana economy. I can tell you that for example, most inventors that have modernized the sugar industry as we know it today have been from Black men. You think about Norbert Ryu, who invented the steam boiler system, which can now be considered the modern day way of milling sugarcane, or Leonard Julian, who invented the cane planter wagon. All of these things are very important for us to learn because it gives us a sense of knowledge and pride of how we have contributed to something that we have been essentially shunned from or shut out of. And so I think it's important for us to be able to share those stories, to have a collective representative of community members. I can give you an example, I guess about a few months ago and last year, and Ebony has been a big support to us. She helped us host a program for local Black sugarcane farmers who hadn't been together in over 30 years. And I have to say, there were probably 40 men and women in the building who hadn't been together in a while. And all that you hear about sugarcane farming in South Louisiana is basically your middle-aged white male during the sugarcane festival weekend, right? Or periodicals put out by the American Sugarcane League, and often a white sugar queen. And I say these things not to be aggressive or attacking, you know, our white brothers and sisters, but to say that white supremacy is a very strong hindrance on us as Black farmers. And so I think amplifying our stories, our past and our present, are super important for us to move on as a more equally based, equitable based society.
Yeah, and I'll just like to add, I mean, I'll try my hardest not to let anybody names go unheard of for a long amount of time, because look, farming is in our blood. And I know for me, you know, not to get too sentimental, but for me, you know, I contemplated suicide because I lost my 5,000 acre farm. They foreclosed on our house. You know, a house I built behind my parents' house so I can take care of them as they get older. You know, I don't think nobody knows how it felt every morning when I go out on the porch, because we moved in with my mom. When I go out on the porch, you see a for sale sign on our home that we planted every tree.
And I have to add, he's talking about it's so painful because the foreclosure was based on a loan where there were photocopied signatures by USDA guaranteed reps and approved by the USDA. So it's not just the simple act of foreclosure. It is foreclosure with the sense of debt peonage. So
and I'm sure all the farmers went through something similar, but you know, we spoke out about it, even though it was embarrassing and still to the day is hurtful, but we spoke out to where it might help other people down the road. You know, because it's still painful to see today the price of sugar that is high as it has ever been since the 70s. And we won't reap the benefits of that. You know who's going to reap the benefits? The White County community member that took all our property. That's who's reaping the benefits today. I mean, and I'm sorry to get emotional, but it's not fair and it's not right. So we have to speak out about it to where we can get the same treatment. We don't want anything else but the same treatment as our white counterparts. We want to be treated fair and equal.
Imagine the voices. Imagine the policies. Imagine the culture, upliftment, and ideas and innovations that would happen if we all had a fair and equal voice in this. So that's what it's really about. It's about the inclusivity of all voices so that we can bring the best for everyone who is living here in these great United States. So it's about bringing about all of the ideas and all of the thoughts that we have as Black farmers today.
The response was incredibly powerful, June and Angie. And I just want to say thank you all so much for giving us the private insights to your experience. Going to shift just a little bit. And this question is for the entire panel. So whoever wants to jump at it first, feel free. And it actually kind of goes to what some of June was saying. This question is around policy. How can policymakers and government agencies better support Black farmers and promote equity in agriculture? And more importantly, what policies do we need to see change? And again, this question is for anyone.
I guess we can, because we're like greatly affected by what's coming out of the USDA currently. Recently, the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, which had Section 22006 and Section 22007. That was not given to us. That was hard-earned work that June and I were a part of, Ebony was a part of. We all had some connection to some lawmaker like Senator Booker, Senator Warren, where all of this came about. 22006 was about forgiving the debt or paying the debt of socially disadvantaged farmers or farmers who were facing some type of, I should say that 22006 was more about farmers who were facing some sort of default or delinquency. And 22007 was about, or is about, the payment of financial assistance, not compensation because it's not a lawsuit, but financial assistance for farmers who can prove they've been discriminated upon. So right now we're entering into a big political race with the presidency and down the ballot issues and local and national politics. I think what politicians can often do is stay consistent. So as we were like negotiating terms, what we would like to see in the Inflation Reduction Act, politicians were literally calling us, emailing almost on a daily basis. And then after things were passed and, we're waiting for all of these acts to go through, things have cooled down. We understand politicians have quite a busy life, but I think that's something that is needed more in uplifting us in our community and keeping us from being disenfranchised in terms of policy making. Also understanding the Farm Bill. But I have to say, for Black farmers particularly who face issues of equal credit violations or issues like that, I think there are things where the damages for ECOA can be lifted. I think elevated in terms of like compensation in when you're filing complaints or when you have won a complaint. Also, statute of limitations have been a big hindrance for Black farmers in terms of being able to file a discrimination complaint for things that have happened to you years and years ago. Those are some particular things that I would like to see being redressed within our U.S. political system, and just consistency from our legal and political representatives.
And I'd just like to add just oversight. I mean, you can change faces, but if you don't have any oversight, it's not going to do us any good. It's going to be the same thing.
Right.
And our main thing is to keep those 30-some-odd thousand farmers that are farming, keep them farming, and try to get the next generation actively involved. We need young Black farmers to continue. So, but oversight is key for us.
Ebony or Carter, did you have anything to add here?
I do. So there are several things I think from a policy standpoint that could be done. So over collateralization is a big issue for Black farmers. And so that's situations where, say, maybe you have $1 million property, you go in and you are asking to borrow $100,000 and they are requiring you to put up your $1 million property. So over collateralization is an issue and something that could be addressed through policy. In addition, I know there have been some organizations that have expressed an interest and maybe even authored some policy changes around the local county committees. Historically, they have played a huge role in the local discrimination against Black farmers. And so I know there were some organizations that were seeking to have USDA do away with the county committees, as well as in terms of access to credit and then some of the policies and discrimination that's happening in that realm. Perhaps policies around requiring information regarding race and, the applicants who are applying and their success rates to be tracked and also released publicly by USDA is something that could be done. There's also, I believe, an Heirs Property Act that's being floated around in this current Farm Bill. And that's something that policymakers could support. And in that act, it would allow organizations to apply for funding to provide the legal services to heirs property owners. So those are some of the things that came to mind for me as it relates to policy that could be done on a national level to address some of the systemic racism and help Black farmers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll add, from a nonprofit perspective, funding is key. So providing targeted funding and grants, I think is huge for us. We navigate food excess mainly, but if we had some consistent funding to support small farms, support Black farms, it would go a really long way, not only providing consistent food, but also job creation and, these communities who benefit them so much just with some consistent, maybe in the farm bill, again, it's not just excess, right? It's targeted towards Black farms, grants, funding to help support that consistent supply of food into the community.
Appreciate that, Carter. I appreciate everybody's answers, but it kind of your answer, Carter, takes us to our next question, kind of, sort of, and that is, how can consumers better support Black farmers? I mean, we've talked about it here and there throughout the course of this conversation, but how can consumers better support Black farmers? And it's to anyone, so please.
For us, I think it's a bit of a lot of it is outreach, right? So I think if you just get online, start Googling where you can find Black farmers in your community, do some research. We've had just community outreach to us, meaning that folks just email us, they message us, and they ask us what we need. And so each Black farm is just as any other farm. We all have our own specific needs for what our business plans are required of. And so I think it's pretty much outreach and finding out what each individual farm needs.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, like for me, it's just sometimes just stop and say hello. That goes a long way, because when you're in like in an office and you feel so isolated, just somebody coming up to you and, if it's something that you sell, they can purchase, they'll do that. But just talking with that farmer for a few minutes goes a long, long way.
And even when you disagree with us, when you disagree with our policies or our politics, still reach out. What June and I are about is about creating some upliftment, equity, equality, and unity. So it's about that specific contact that creates like this bandwidth of support for us.
Like what you were saying earlier about equal opportunity, right? It's being thoughtful about where our food is coming from. We've been fortunate to be able to partner with some of these grants with the Black Farmers Market here in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, in the Triangle. Black Farmers Hub has introduced us to a lot of people. There's a lot of collaboration that happens in the farming community, and that access point has just been so key. I mean, people just need to know, and like you said, Google Black farms in your area so that you can be well versed with who is doing a CSA, who is providing some community supported agriculture at a Black farm, and then make those decisions thoughtfully about where your food's coming from.
And to jump in and piggyback off of what Carter was saying, that was one of my ideas. Again, support your local farmers markets, especially here. I'm in South Louisiana. Instead of going to grocery stores and buying imported shrimp and seafood, we have a lot of seafood markets where, our community fishermen are going out and selling, what they catch, in addition to like the farmers. So it's watermelon season. There's tons of farmers coming in from Mississippi and around Louisiana that are selling their watermelons, from the back of the truck on the side of the road, so support them instead of buying from the grocery stores. Again, June kind of said, stopping by. So I know a lot of Black farmers and other farmers of colors, are getting into agritourism. So supporting that. And then again, GoFundMe. Angie and June haven't mentioned it, but they have a GoFundMe. I know other farmers of colors that have GoFundMe. So, every little bit helps, whether it's $1 or $5, $10, but just any way that you can. Another thing is spreading awareness, especially for the people who are here today and that are listening to this conversation. If you would just start having these conversations with your family members and your friends, whether you're a person of color or not, but just bringing awareness to the plight of farmers of color, not just Black farmers, and the things that they're experiencing, and paying attention to the policies on a state, local, and a national level, and really getting involved and advocating are all things I think that consumers could do.
We're coming up on time, and before we transition and start taking some questions from our audience, my last question for this group, maybe you can quickly answer it, is just simply, what makes you hopeful? I mean, everything we talked about, just really quickly, what makes you hopeful, and we'll transition over.
What makes us hopeful are the partnerships that we've developed with people like Ebony, the partnerships that we plan to have in the future, and just the ability to grow beyond our adversities. And so I think that's what makes me super hopeful and joyous.
I mean, I guess for me, it's just when we get young, especially young kids that come up and even though they know the story and the hardships that we went through, they still want to learn about the farm. And I tell them Attracta is the best office you can have. I mean, it has radio, AC, they got 3 computer screens in it. And for them to come and ask and want to learn about farming, that's what gives me joy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, just that these conversations are happening, that people are starting to prioritize equity and sustainability in some of their relationships and purchases. And then it's just growing awareness and support for food justice overall. Meeting new innovative Black farmers, BIPOC community, and women-owned businesses, and getting those policymakers to hear these stories where more and more funding can be thought of when they think of small farmers and small farming community, and again, making that collaboration and those relationships happen. Because every time you meet somebody new, farmers are very passionate. They want to help the community. They want to be successful in what they're doing, and they're doing innovative things. And we just need to hear more about it and shout it from the rooftops.
Okay, and to kind of piggyback off of what Carter was saying again, to see the collaboration of the different organizations that are in this agricultural space that are doing the work, even organizations that are not Black led or, specifically focused on Black farming, to see those partnerships and the work that everyone's doing, the fact that today we're having this webinar through Aspen Institute talking about, Black farmers and justice and equity. And for me, being at the Law Center and seeing the young law students now have expressed an interest in agricultural law, environmental law, and as well as earlier this year, David and I connected in Chicago at the Manners Conference. So it's minorities in agriculture, natural resources, and related sciences. But just to see the youth and the next generation have an interest in agriculture and to see them be advocates as well in this space gives me hope. And a lot of times the things like you say we talk about and it kind of seems depressing or gets us down, but the people, that are on this call, we're all doing the work. And I guess call me I don't know, a hopeless, I was going to say hopeless romantic, but it's not romance. But I just believe ultimately at the end of the day that good will prevail, and that ultimately one day that we'll get there and we'll have this equitable and just society, and that we're adding to the foundation that those who came before us have laid. But, we're doing our part, and eventually I just truly believe that we'll get there.
Thanks for that, Ebony. There are questions from a few questions from our audience. First question is, what types of resources do Black farmers need to deal with as it relates to the impacts of climate change?
For us, I think the issue of climate change just to let y'all know where we are, we're at the Port of Iberia. So we sit sort of like where Ebony is in New Orleans, we sit sort of in this bowl surrounded by water. Not only that, but we're in a highly industrialized space. So we're adjacent to a few sugar mills. We have some oil industries around us as well. And I think that there's a great deal of special needs for us as Black farmers in terms of, having access to regenerative and sustainable growing methods that we can afford, because sustainability for farmers is quite expensive. And so I think, ending some of those cost share programs and making them just be fully funded by the USDA or grantors or loan makers would be a great, I think, alleviation of some hurdles that we have, just to do the practices that that we know we need to do in terms of sustainability and combating issues such as weather and climate and just general soil erosion and coastal erosion for us.
Yeah, because climate change is here. I mean, this year we've had rain galore, but last year we experienced one of the worst droughts in history. So it's important for farmers to, start doing cover crops. Stop putting Roundup in fallow ground as so much people do in this area. So we're trying to change that narrative as well. So because climate change is here, and we have to adapt to it. So we have to change our methods of farming.
And I have to say that, a part of what we are is like fighting for our rights, again, is fighting for the rights of all family farmers, but particularly highlighting our issues because we feel like we face some of the biggest barriers. But most family farmers are practicing some form of conservation. The problem is that agriculture is supporting the big guy. And when you have that support is coming down from your federal government, you tend to have a monopoly on the industry. And that's where you see large factory farms that are doing such a disservice to us, I think, here, especially for us as Black people, because we tend to live in low-lying areas here in South Louisiana, just based on historical issues. And so I think, just having access to resources where we can get fair funding and to the best practices. So,
thanks for sharing. Another question from our audience is, are there tech innovations that have you excited right now? Are there any tech innovations that have you excited right now?
Can we take this one again? Self-driving tractors, tractors that are precision row making, precision leveling. There's so much. There's advancements in seed making, not GMO, but with heirloom seeds. There's advancements of trying to, bring about more resources that way for us as farmers. So yeah.
And I don't want to take up too much time, but I get really, really excited. So it's like for us, like when I would just say probably 10 years ago, when we used to draw our rows, which makes like just picture a flat field, and then you have to make a 6-foot row. So we would have like guys, or we'll get like a tree and try to just draw the straightest line you possibly could. Now it's like you don't even hold the steering wheel. It does all the work for you. I picture in 20 years, you will have self-driving tractors.
Electric tractors.
Literally you have 4 or 5 computer screens in some tractors. So it's just amazing. You even have drones now that are spraying herbicides, which is way better than having a helicopter or an airplane flying over houses. So you can like pinpoint exactly where you want that herbicide sprayed. So it's amazing.
And can I just add this one like basic, real technical TA assistance thing for Black farmers? One thing that has helped us out is just your basic internet service, meaning that your basic email service and social media. What that allows us to do is sort of not disengaged with the USDA, but sort of protect ourselves from a particular loan officer or county committee member that may tell us that they're not going to help us and they don't want to see us succeed. We can sort of like avoid that trauma in some way and do things through like a digital age and keep record. And that I think is helpful for us in terms of building our case of what we're experiencing as socially disadvantaged farmers in this community. So those simple, basic tech things, those are huge, very huge.
Got it. And so we'll end on this warm, lighthearted question from our audience, and maybe all of you can answer this. And that is, what is your favorite thing to produce, to grow and eat? What are your favorite produce to grow and eat?
Ebony.
Okay, I'll hop in.
Okay.
Because I'm so excited. So for those of you who don't know, I live in the New Orleans area. We have a subtropical climate. And so I love tropicals. I grow pineapples. I have papaya. I have a dragon fruit cactus and blackberries. I just got some muscadine grapevines from a friend. So I'm all excited about growing tropicals.
Sweet.
I'm not a farmer. My grandfather was a farmer, and he was in dairy in Texas. But in North Carolina, it's all about sweet potatoes, and definitely many different ways to make sweet potatoes. And they're about, from a food bank perspective, they're about as shelf stable as we can get in the produce world. So we really like it. They're packed with nutrition and good for the folks that need it. So I'll just promote sweet potatoes for me.
And I guess for me, I would say
Sugarcane.
Of course, sugarcane is the most beautiful crop. Y'all just have to see it in the wind. It gets 12 feet tall. But seriously, when I really lost the farm completely, the first thing I did was grew a small garden in our backyard. I mean, and I always tell people, plant a seed. It is the most magnificent thing to watch that seed become a plant, like just something simple. Because I always say, even when planting sugarcane, that's a sense of hope for me, because that's our future. So I always tell people, plant anything. It doesn't matter what it is, and just watch it grow. I mean, and I'm telling you, it would make you want to grow more and more and more. So
right. Just this past weekend, and Ebony was actually with us, we participated in Tales of the Cocktails in New Orleans, where we juiced fresh sugarcane juice for a group at two restaurants, one out of San Francisco and one out of New York. And like, that is like, to see that juice come out of that stalk you just grew was, that was fun. That was amazing. So just more of that, I think, is exciting.
Standing. Well, panelists, I want to say thank you so much for your insights. Thank you for making the time to be in space and community with us. Certainly, again, want to extend our gratitude to Share Our Strength, as well as Food and Society at the Aspen Institute, for creating spaces like this for us to come together, reason, talk, and share ideas that hopefully allow us to punch above our weight class when it comes to things like equity and access in this space. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Elliot Gaskins, and he'll give some remarks and close us out. Thank you all so much for your time.
Wow, what an extraordinary discussion, an extraordinary group of panel. I'm honored, and we're all honored that you're a part of the conversation today. Thank you, David, and thank you to everybody that participated on the panel for such an incredible discussion. From George Washington Carver to all of you, the contributions you have made to America have been profound. We have a responsibility to celebrate your contributions and support your continued prosperity. Deeply grateful for everything that you're doing for communities and lifting up families in your work. And thank you all of our listeners for joining our conversation today. My colleagues at Share Our Strength and our partners at Food and Society at the Aspen Institute are proud of this series, particularly in this moment when we can appear so fractured as a nation that we can come together to challenge assumptions, educate ourselves, and try to find common ground and common solutions as we address food insecurity and many other intersecting issues that are impacting children and families all across this country. Thanks to you all for being with us for another season of this series. We'll take a brief pause for the remainder of the summer, but be back this fall for a slate of really terrific programs and leaders. We're excited to bring that to you this fall. Thanks again for joining today. Thanks again to all of our panels, and everybody have a terrific summer. Take care.